got you now. Oh,
Yeah.
is that a passenger hoodie you've got on there?
Yeah. That
I
okay?
very nearly wore a passenger t-shirt. That'd have been a bit of a clash, wouldn't
I thought
it?
I thought you were going to say there's some sponsorship conflict there and all that. I was like, oh no, we have to get changed.
No, not at
Yeah,
all.
this
They've
was
done amazingly, haven't they, over the last 12 months, just from nowhere?
it's a brand that I'm pretty new to, but my wife got me this for Christmas, and I've almost not had it off yet. It's quality. I love it. I
It's
love
great
what
stuff, isn't it? A lot of
yeah,
it's recycled as well, yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, I love that kind of brand, and it's just had Christmas, then I roll into my birthday on Monday. So you never
Nice.
know. I've maybe dropped some hints that I quite like this stuff, and we'll see how it goes. How are you? Thanks very much for
I'm
joining me.
good, thank you. Yeah, yeah. No, it's a joyous thing to do, actually. It's always nice to talk to like-minded people, isn't it?
Well,
And call it work.
call it work. Like-minded. You, I think you posted something about Doddie Aid or something on a rugby. I saw you somewhere. You popped up, and I was like, I need to speak to him. Look at all the cool stuff. Just going back through your pages and seeing the shows that you've done, you've been on, and everything that you're involved with. I was like, I've just got to reach out, and here we are. It's cool how these things happen, and they can
Yeah.
always happen quite quickly.
We always sort of attract each other, don't we? I think bearded Scotsmen who like the outdoors and rugby.
And
Really, what's
rugby,
not to love?
there's a few common themes between us, and I noticed. Were you at the South Africa game? Were you at a few of the autumn internationals?
Yeah, I went to all of them.
Did
So
you?
yeah, I was brought up in Sandy, which is in Bedfordshire on the A1, and obviously Edinburgh is on the A1, so it's only one road. It's just a really tedious
Yeah.
1 hour, sort of 7 hour drive. But yeah, my cousin lives in Trinent, sort of on the east end of Edinburgh. So I just drive up, stay with her. We go to all the games. So I've got a season ticket at Murrayfield.
Well,
I do
listen,
pass a lot of stadiums to get there.
but listen, I am 5 minutes from Trinent. I'm in Longnidry.
Oh, really?
So
Just around the corner?
I'm just around the corner. So next time you're
Yeah,
up, there'll be the fire pit will be going. We'll be going for a cold dunk. We'll get in the sea
absolutely.
because I
Well,
see we've got tons to cover here because I see you do your cold water swimming. You're on your house. Are you on your houseboat right now?
that's right. This is it. It's a 40-foot shipping container. This is 1,000 pieces of pallet wood behind me. People think it's wallpaper, but that was one of those jobs where I went, yeah, that'll be fine. It'll take 10 minutes. About 3 days in, I thought, what have I started? But I often do that. It's fun, isn't it? You only live once.
And
Why not chop up a pallet?
is that the stove behind us with the kettle on
So I've
top?
got a stove. I'm absolutely sweating because I just love the stove. Even in the summer, I light it just for the ambience and just the smell of burning wood and stuff,
Yeah.
to poke a log fire occasionally. So yeah, but yeah, it's a 40-foot container. And do you know what? It's plenty big enough. A lot of people say that, how do you live in such a small space? You've got to be a bit tidy and thoughtful and mindful of how you store things. But small space design is really important going forwards because people aren't getting on the housing market, are they? Young couples aren't aspiring to own a 2 up, 2 down anymore like we used to.
Mm-hmm. And how often do you buy new stuff?
I'm not a complete hippie. I'm not a complete eco warrior. I do like buying stuff. People assume that once you say you're sustainable, then that's it. You're locked in and you reuse everything. So, the obvious things like using a bag for life and those, the easy stuff. But I'm not greener than green. Don't get me wrong. In the workshop, I buy new timber. I don't use all reclaimed materials where possible. The iconic roll top baths and the shopping trolleys and stuff as the core material. But I don't mind popping down to Screwfix and buying a box of screws that are new. I'm not chiseling out paint from granddad's old screw tin.
And how did the houseboat come to be? How did that sort of idea come about? Was it something you'd always wanted to do, or where did it start?
Yeah, it was. It was something I'd actually sketched it out when I was a kid. I just really wanted to live, and I sketched out a 20-foot container. Actually, I was really overly hopeful and ambitious. And but then as things evolved, and I gave up my job as a car designer, and I started making things out of junk, it just became the next obvious thing. I put a 20-foot container in my old back garden and turned that into a home office, which gave me the confidence that I knew that the materials and the techniques worked, and then it could be done on a bigger scale. And then just bought a 40-foot. So I sold that cottage, freed up 50 grand's worth of equity, and then just used that to build this houseboat for 47.5 grand it was in the end. And it's the view. I mean, I'm in Bedford. Bedford isn't known for being beautiful. Let's be honest, but it does have a glorious river, and most places have nice rivers. And I've never seen an ugly marina either. So I just pay a mooring fee, mortgage free. Don't have big overheads, which means I have a bit more time to go paddleboarding, for example, which it isn't something that comes naturally to me. I was brought up very much work hard, post-war parents, so my dad would encourage me to dig a hole and fill it rather than watch the telly. He was really all about doing and grafting. And I've had to almost unlearn that a little bit. That was one of the problems with lockdown for me, was that without my work and without doing stuff, I felt a little bit lost. That was how I identified, was through my work. So the first lockdown, I went a bit stir crazy. Some of my Instagram videos are there to prove it. I cut my own hair and started doing cookery shows whilst drinking wine and paddleboarding every day. But yeah, I kind of felt a bit lost. I remember the first day they said about lockdown, I actually got my van, drove to my workshop and got all my tools and put them in the van. I thought, you're not keeping me locked away from my tools, because I'd feel completely lost without them. Of course, I could still go to my workshop on my own, but that was my biggest fear. So yeah, learning to spend time on my own, paddling, like you say, freshwater swimming, those kinds of things. But it's really good for you as well, isn't it? Being on your own, learning to live with your own thoughts.
My wife will vouch for this, and she's the same. We get a very little piece. We've got 3 kids, 7, 6, and 4. So COVID obviously in the house, and there's so many parents that had to deal with the same thing, but there was little pockets of time where you maybe did get half an hour on your own, or you went for that walk yourself, or I ended up in the sea, because I can literally walk across the golf club. Yeah, those pockets of time when you're on your own, they're valuable and they're crucial.
Yeah.
In your own headspace, and the conversations you had with yourself, and the times that you can just sort of have nothing else going on. COVID,
it's really important, isn't it?
Really important for mental health, for all sorts of things, and that's such a current topic that's spoken about a lot more, which is crucial. And a lot of men don't speak about anything, So a lot of the guys that I get conversations with.
That's a great thing about rugby at the moment. You've got the likes of Joe Marler and people really speaking out about it, and that's fantastic. Because in that environment, I mean, I'm old enough to remember my last season of my first season of senior rugby. We all jumped in a shared bath. That's how old I am. Times have really come on so far, haven't they? In terms of health and safety, mental health. You would never cry in front of your teammates. Imagine the ribbon you would get in a big shared bath.
Yeah,
it's changed completely, hasn't it?
So where did you play rugby?
Oh, locally. I went to Bournemouth University, so I played there. And I was obviously a scrum half. Well, scrum half that then pushed to the wing. It used to be in the good old days that as you got slower, you just got relegated a bit. Yeah. So I actually scored the winning try in a game against my former club for my new club. And I was a teacher at the time. I was a part-time teacher, and some of the students were there, and I scored the winning try. I went, that's it. Just walked off the pitch. I thought I'd finish on a little flourish, on a little high. But I loved it growing up, and I never realised how important that was to my life as well. When it didn't happen in the first lockdown, couldn't get out to the rugby, couldn't be around all those people, couldn't hear the pipes, silly things like that. Singing the anthem, I was in tears. The first game back at Murrayfield, I was in floods of tears. It just felt so good to all be back, and I never thought I was a pack animal. I never thought I needed sport. But as soon as it's taken away from you, it's phenomenal how much I realised I relied on it.
A lone piper at a night game at Murrayfield is just epic. It's goosebumps. And when
but if you show somebody a clip on YouTube, they go, "What? Just a person playing the bagpipes on the roof?" No, it's not. It's more than that. There's fireworks, there's lights, there's, like you say, the chills, the thrills. And I think possibly the further you get from Scotland, because although I speak like I speak, which is the most awkward thing in the world, by the way, if you turn up at a rugby game at Murrayfield in the kilt, go to the toilet, and then someone says, like, "How you doing?" You don't want to sound like this. So I don't say words. I just make grunts. I just go, "Eh?" It's almost like an I, but not a fake Scottish I. Yeah, I just go, "Eh?" You just feel a bit left out. But yeah, I'm proud to be Scottish. My dad was from Port Seaton, just near you as well, I suppose.
Still on the road, yeah.
He grew up there. Yeah. He grew up there, living in a tram, as it goes. And mum was sort of Glasgow side, so 100% Scottish. And then they just came south and set up down here. So I completely identify as 100% Scottish.
My dad, do you know Seaton? Have you been to Port Seaton? My dad used to live in one of the apartments in Seaton Castle. He used to live or rent a room or something. Yeah. Because he was brought up in Trinent.
So what age would he be? They'd probably walked along the beach together to school or something crazy.
Oh, God, Dad's 74. He just turned 74.
Yeah, so mine would have been about 10 years older. But it was really strange. So I used to, for the rugby, I'd come up in a camper van and I'd stay at, is it Drumore? The campsite at Drumore, just round the corner. My accent's terrible for pronouncing names.
Round the corner from
From where you are,
Where I am. Drummoor.
There's a lovely Drummoor, there's a
God, I
lovely
should probably
campsite there. And I remember about 10 years ago, I just stumbled across it because I was going to a game, I was late, hadn't booked anything, searched on the phone, found that campsite, booked in, and I've gone back ever since. It's lovely, and it's my little place. There's a fish and chip shop on the way back from the game. I have a little bit of fish and chips, go back to the camper van. It's my little routine. Last summer, my dad's brother died, so I went to see his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And we were chatting, and she said, well, your dad would be so proud of what you've done, especially given that they all grew up in a converted tram. I said, pardon, what are you talking about? I'd never been told this story, this family story. Oh, yeah, they grew up in Port Seton. After the war, your granddad wouldn't accept money from the government or a free house. So he got an old tram, they converted it, and they lived in a converted tram in Port Seton, in where the holiday park is, basically. They rented a pitch there. They lived in an old tram, and nobody had ever told me this before. Which I thought, well, that's amazing, isn't it? How your destiny's kind of got to be mapped out. And I happen to be staying in a campsite every year, numerous times, 3 miles down the road. The fish and chip shop was the local fish and chip shop to where Dad would have grown up and probably been. And it's just all a bit spooky and weird, really.
It's in the blood, you know. It's in the
that's
blood.
where I went swimming the other day that you might have seen on my Instagram. That was cold.
We're up here.
Yeah, Port Seton, yeah.
That's literally, I jump in every day. I'm doing dip a day December. So I've been in every day in December at the moment. I finish it obviously on New Year's Day. But I'm just down at the rocks at Long Nidri. But we often pop along to Port Seton, or we go to North Berwick a bit further, and we're all along this coast. What a small world. You know, I'm watching you in your houseboat and renovating camper vans and all this. But actually, when you start talking to somebody, you find out that more often than not, you're quite local and you're just around the corner. What a strange world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Strange world we live in. So the rugby, am I right in saying have you done bits and pieces with the team?
Yes, I did. That was the best moment of my life. So I've become friends with Ryan Wilson, mainly because he's completely bonkers.
Right.
And been to a few games, and he's allowed me into, I'm not sure if we should be saying this, but he's allowed me into the dressing room afterwards and for a few beers with the boys beforehand and stuff. And that's been fantastic. And then he spoke to some of the management and said, I think it's the build up to the World Cup. And they came together as a squad, and they needed these sort of team building exercises. He said, why don't we do a big upcycling event? And I thought, yes, please, absolutely. I mean, I'd pay to attend.
Yeah.
I went, oh, no, we'll pay you to come and do a keynote speech and to do some upcycling. So I phoned my cousin, who's a huge rugby fan, and said, can you come and work with me for the day, please? I'll tell you about it when you arrive. And lo and behold, it was doing an upcycling workshop for the team, which was just phenomenal. So I think we made stag's heads with copper pipe and some old scaffold boards. And it's fascinating to see all the forwards, big lads. Hamish Watson was there going, I'm going to give it some. And then little Laidlaw popped in. He's an ex-joiner as it goes, just fantastic fabricator, yeah. So through that, I've become not pals, but friendly with a few of the guys, and that was just an honour. I had to pinch myself that day in a couple of hotel rooms with all of the team making things, and they're listening to my story. They're my heroes, and yet they're listening to my story and clapping me. I thought that's quite surreal.
It's awesome. I like what you said there, but I've had that before when I'm connected a little bit to Edinburgh Rugby. So I've hosted their podcast. I host some business club events and things like that. So I've been behind the scenes quite a few times and done sort of behind the scenes social media stuff. But I remember a few years back, it was the 1872 Cup, and Glasgow were playing Edinburgh. And my good friend, the guy Stevie Laurie, is the forwards coach for Edinburgh. So I was in the stadium with my son, a friend, and his son. So we both text Stevie and said, hi, mate, we're both here. Any chance of seeing some of the players after the game? And we got a text back saying, depends if we win or lose, understandably. So Edinburgh won, and we're leaving because we thought we won't bother Stevie. The text comes through. He says, meet us at the players' tunnel in 2 minutes. So we start tanking it round. And then we go into the changing room. And I'd been in before, but to do it with my son, Hunter, for him to see the players that they're his heroes. And what I hadn't seen in a long time was just how broken some of the players were after a game like that. How physical, how they struggling to second row, struggling to stand up, shaking hands, having a beer, a bite of pizza after a game. Just the physicality of what these guys go through. But for my boy, and for me to remind myself, for my boy to see it though, what an experience it is getting into a professional changing room after a game. It's just class.
And they give everything, don't they? And the game has changed. When
Yeah.
I played, I wouldn't even go near a ruck or a maul, being a little scrum half or a winger. But even the forwards weren't you didn't have that impact, did you? The dominant tackles and the collisions were nowhere near. It was almost gentlemanly. You'd let the player kind of run alongside you, then you'd wrap around the thighs and slide around the ankles. There was nowhere near the impact. And it's quite tough, I think. And talking about mental health in rugby, I think a lot of these forwards, particularly the forwards, we ask them to put their body on the line, to actually sing the anthem in front of all of us, represent us, shield that ball with their body, and take a right kick in and a beating. And then once we're done with them and they're not in the top 15, we just go, oh, actually, no, you're all right, mate. We're done with you. Thanks ever so much. And I know some of them get paid quite handsomely now, but nothing like football, but certainly not enough you can't play professional rugby for 10 years and just live off that forever. So that mentally must be a hard adjustment to make for those guys. I do worry about that quite a lot.
It's tough for them. I've done years gone by things with sort of life after rugby. And I've done podcasts speaking to players about what their plans are, trying to study while they're playing. But it just takes, as we know, one knee ligament, one serious neck injury, and they're out. Yeah. So no, it is. It's a bit of it's a dark area, that if you're not a household name, or you're going to walk straight into a book deal, or you're a 3-time British Lion and you're going to be getting commentary gigs and speaking gigs for the rest of your life, it must be hard. It's something that I think it is looked at, and there are people in the right positions to help. Certainly I know Scottish Rugby, that they do what they can to prepare the players for life after rugby. But it's something that they've said to me, look, there's so much living to do after rugby,
absolutely. And I mean, like Ryan, for example, one of his hands, the fingers are all bent and buckled and broken, and all those long-term injuries that might come back. And now we're talking about concussion and stuff as well. There's a lot to be said for it, isn't there? But I'm very fortunate. I've fallen into a career completely by accident, where actually it's as long-term as I want it to be. And I can go down and potter in my workshop on a cold day, light the fire, have a cup of coffee. It's exactly what I would do if I was an accountant in the day. My time at weekends and evenings would be spent pottering in a workshop, designing, inventing and making things. So I'm incredibly lucky that I found my thing and I can commercialize it. That's something I'm very fortunate for.
But what was the big break that took you into becoming an author, getting on TV and things like that? What sort of stage in life were you at when that everything changed?
I guess it was probably Dragon's Den in 2007. That was until then I'd been designing, making. I'd been quite frustrated. I'd go to Camden Market and try and sell my stuff because I thought that's where all the eco warriors go. But obviously £2,000 for a sofa made out of a cast iron roll top bath isn't really, you're not going to sell one of them every week at Camden Market. People understood it and they liked it, and the plaudits were there, and I got featured in magazines, but I wasn't making a living. Like I said, I was a part-time teacher, barman, anything I could do to subsidize it. And then went on Dragon's Den in 2007. And I must confess, I thought, if I get that 10-minute slot, most people get rejected, but some of the rejections last a little bit longer. And I thought, if I can just get a little bit of publicity, I can probably make a few sales off the back of it. That's all I thought I'd get. So when Deborah and Theo invested in the business, that was a bit of a wow moment. And I thought, oh, and actually they are good at what they do. They're not massively hands-on, but they're there on the end of the phone to advise. They don't come and run your business for you by any stretch, but what they do is make you raise your own game. I think your reporting, I remember I had a little book, and it was if Deborah calls ... So if she calls on a Friday afternoon, typically when you might have just sort of knocked off mentally, she'll phone up and say, right, what was turnover, and ask you all of the questions. And if you didn't have the answers like that, she'd get quite frustrated with you because she's giving you real money and she's bothering her time. So why waste it? So that was one of the things I think I raised my game a little bit and realized that I'm not into money. I don't like money. I find it amazing that people are so addicted to it. I just like to be able to live and survive and enjoy some nice stuff, but nothing over the top. I get quite embarrassed about it, really. I think a lot of creative people do. Typically, creative people are awful at charging for their hours, for example. I'll happily pay my accountant and my solicitor £250 an hour, but I wouldn't dream of charging 25. That seems embarrassing. Oh, it's only little me. I'm not worth it. It's an age-old thing, I think, with creatives. But they made me realise that it's okay to make money and actually put in the proper hours and charge proper money and think about margins and markup and profits and all of those things. So now when I come up with one of my daft ideas, I do now immediately jump to what's the potential sales price for this? How long is it likely to take? What are the raw material costs? And quite quickly, 99% of my ideas just stay in a sketchbook because they don't work commercially. Now, the difference is with TV and books and things, you then can use those ideas because they don't have to be saleable, they don't have to be profitable, because you're being paid another way for creating them. So you can be a bit more, I love a provocative idea, something that 15-year-old me is sat at home feeling a bit pissed off with school, isn't really academic, doesn't really feel like he's got a place in life. And if he saw me making a table that pivots and glasses fall off and it all goes a bit haywire, but there's a really nice bit of engineering concept behind it, I imagine 15-year-old me going, oh, mum, that's what I want to do when I'm older. And if that happens, which, I mean, I've received some lovely letters off kids, then that is the best feeling in the world. So I am, again, very fortunate in that respect, that not all of my ideas now need to be commercially viable. I don't need to be able to sell them for huge profit margins. And actually, I don't like repetition anyway. Once I've made something and it works, I'm bored of it. I want to go on to the next thing. And that's when my accountant would say, you know, you could now cash in on this. You could now get a production line, employ people and make some money from it. Well, I don't want to employ somebody and pay them £10 an hour and make £20 an hour out of them. They're the ones adding the value. I don't want to, you know, if I can't add value myself, I don't feel like I deserve it. So
it's so important what you said there about children. And I'm not against education at all and these sorts of things, but if a kid watches you in one of your videos or sees something or hears something that you've built and they say, I want to do that, it's okay for them to do that. You know, it's okay for them to try and fail.
And failure is so important, isn't it? Yeah, I think that was another reason I didn't like subjects like maths, because it was definitely 2 + 2 is definitely 4. And if you don't get 4, you're just wrong. It's a yes, no, isn't it? Whereas in design, it's your interpretation. It's here's my heartfelt thought of how this thing should be made. On the same sort of, on the flip of that, it's also quite a difficult subject, because you are constantly standing up and saying, here is my best work, have a go at it. So you are constantly open for abuse and people saying, oh, you should have done it this way, can't believe you didn't do it that way. So you've got to be quite brave to be a designer as well, because you are constantly doing things differently. The easiest thing to do in the world is to just be conventional and stay the same. But as a designer, it's your responsibility to change the world. I'm not suggesting I am, but people, you know, like Elon Musk, complete loon, but he's potentially changing the world, hopefully for the better. And they have that opportunity, and that's what all designers have. And I've got a thing at the moment with Bedford Rugby Club, where we take some of the disengaged and disadvantaged local kids, and I do just some upcycling and design projects with them. And at the end of it, it sounds like an overstatement. I said, like, they always get something from it. They don't like to engage at the beginning. They're too cool for it. And I'm wearing a cardigan and I'm a 44-year-old man. And they're much cooler than me, and I don't listen to hip hop. But by the end of it, they all leave with a little something they've made. It might be an iPhone holder or something, and they have all got a little bit of a spring in their step. They do feel like they're worth something. They can achieve. They don't need to go down the path they thought was the only path for them, possibly before the session. So that's something that does make me really happy as well. Is showing people that they've all got a worth, but they might not have recognised it yet. Like you say, the standard academic setup doesn't always reward kids who aren't good at maths, English and science. And I wasn't. And funnily enough, it was rugby that saved me there as well, because my design technology teacher, John Bonson, he was also the rugby coach. So I kind of, because I was captain of the rugby team, not because I was outstandingly good, but because I'd been playing from a very young age. I played juniors and tag and all those things.
Yeah.
So I then used to liaise with him more. And he said, look, you should come into the design department. And I remember I actually used to get him to give me fake detentions sometimes. So I'd have an excuse to not go and play football in the playground at lunchtime. I could go in and learn how to use the lathe and stuff like that, because I loved it so much. But he had to give me fake detentions.
Yeah, it's something there that if their kid isn't good at maths or doesn't like French, it's not the end of the world. You got to get a basic understanding. You got to get the education as best as you can and come out with as much as you can, I think. But if you don't want to go to university and you want to build things, or you want to go into explore the oceans or travel, you know, there's a lot of pressure. And you know, the way we grade kids and the way that they're not clever, they're in the class that gets extra help and all that sort of stuff. I forget what they're called. It's been so long since I've been at school, but you know what I mean? They're in the lower group, and straight away that's them pigeonholed, you know, through school. And they're not good at maths. They probably won't be good at English, but they're brilliant in technology. Or they're brilliant on the football pitch, or have you seen her swim? You know, that thing is, it does happen, and it's a lot to do with the parents that can identify what their kid is good at, help them where they're not so strong, but really push them into what they enjoy and see how good they can become.
Yeah, because if you enjoy something, you put in 100%, and if you put in 100%, you get more reward, you get more out of it. Therefore, you put more into it. It's a spiral effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think also the education system, it's pretty much just memory. If you've got a
Yeah.
photographic memory and
Yeah.
you can remember loads of formulas or loads of books, and I haven't, I've got an awful memory. So I just didn't suit that at all. And even now, I can't read books. I love books. I've got lots of them, and design books are good because they're pictures. But if I read 2 pages of a book, my mind starts drifting off because I've read something about a tree, and I think, oh, that tree could be carved into this thing. You could make a bivvy out of that. My mind goes off, and I'm visualizing stuff that isn't even in the book, and I then have to go back to page 1 and reread it 3 times. It's just not the way I learn. I find that very hard. And we're fortunate now you can listen to podcasts or audio books and things like that. So
Yeah. Are you
I'm
good with instructions? Are you good with instructions, or do you throw them
No,
out?
I throw away instructions, but I always throw them semi away. They're always
Just in
available if
case.
I need to go back.
Just in case. No, I can imagine that you just sort of whatever you get, you just empty the box, have a look, and get to work.
Yeah, quite often, yeah. But I try not to buy as much flat pack as possible. I try to manufacture things myself, but I'm not adverse to shopping in, let's say, IKEA and flat pack. I used to get a lot of people suggesting that I'd only buy secondhand furniture. I do have like this is an old Eames and an old G plan. I do like the mid-century modern furniture that you can get from charity shops, and the fact that you then have to repair them a little bit and they've got a story and you're helping a charity at the same time. But I don't mind buying new, and you get some fantastic new stuff out there. And I think for a good interior design setup, I think mixing the old and new is actually really quite a successful look quite often.
And the houseboat itself, what challenges is there to living on a houseboat that I wouldn't think about?
The biggest thing about, so in terms of the living space, that's all fine. I've made it quite open plan. I foolishly put a wall of glass overlooking the water, which is an obvious thing to do. You think, I want to enjoy looking at the water, the ducks, the swans, the geese. However, the sun doesn't know that I don't want it to constantly blaze in during the summer. And I don't have any windows on the other side because there's an ugly boat out the other side. Sorry, Dave, it's not that ugly. But I've got no opening windows. So again, the air doesn't flow through. So I've got an entire wall of glass that opens up beautifully, but it gets stifling hot. So people imagine it gets cold. It's quite the opposite. It gets too hot. I don't have a condensation problem, but in small space design, often that is a problem as well, the thermal barrier. But the biggest thing is sewage. So you don't think about that either. And without being too graphic, you have to empty your own sewage. So you have to have cassette toilets, and you have to go down to the Elsan and empty them out and stuff. And that has reminded me repeatedly how lucky we are as a society to have sewage. Imagine a world without it. And actually, I do go to Kenya most years, and that is a place that really reminds you how fortunate we are. I used to get really upset being called lucky. So when I go back and go to a school reunion, and everyone would go, "Oh, you're so lucky, you do what you love." And I used to be really upset with them and say, "No, I'm not. I work really hard. I work twice the hours you lot work. It's not luck. It's hard work and determination and getting knocked down and standing up again." And then I realised we are lucky, aren't we? The fact that you and I got brought up in rugby playing families, that probably puts us in the top 10% already without even thinking about it. And then the fact that we're in the UK, we're not born in Nakuru, the slums of Nakuru in Kenya, where they don't have running water, they don't have food, they don't have shelter, they don't have a heater in their house or a cooker. So we are in the top 1%, aren't we, really, of lucky people? And then there's all the other intricacies of being lucky and being brought into sort of certain societies and having opportunity. So that was one thing I have learned to change as well, my opinion on being lucky. I still do work harder than some of them, though.
I bet you do, in everything that you've achieved. Obviously, you've earned, as you said, and you've deserved. But at what point, when you go in on Dragon's Den, actually tell us about that process, because I don't think I've had anyone on that's been on Dragon's Den. What was it like? Was the application quick? Was it difficult? And what was the actual experience in the den like, speaking to the entrepreneurs?
So it's more real than I thought it'd be. I went to an audition, and I had the flu or something at the time, and it didn't feel like it went particularly well. So when I got invited back to go on the actual den, I thought, oh, they're going to use me as that scapegoat, the one that gets absolutely hammered. Deborah's going to rip into me, sort of thing. But my theory was, I don't have a good memory, like I've said. So when I was rehearsing, it was just 5 things. We'll just remember 5 key bullet points any more than that and you'll go off script. And I think it always looks worse when somebody goes off script than just makes it up as they go along. And also, I did know my topic. I knew my products. I knew the numbers. I may have fudged a bit, but I just knew the relationship between the numbers. So I thought it doesn't matter what number you state at the start, as long as you know the ratios. So I knew the basics, and it was silly things like say your name at the beginning, and at the end say any questions, and then 3 main key points in the middle. I don't remember them now, and I had them written down on an envelope, and I paced up and down in the hotel the night before, super nervous, but naive at the same time. I was quite feisty. If I look back now, I was more feisty than I would be, I think, if I went on today. So the stairs weren't real. You turn up at the studio, and it's changed since, but you turned up at the studio and there's just a staircase that went up to a ceiling. So you had to do some shots of you walking up these stairs, and they had to take photographs to make sure for continuity you had the same outfit and everything looked the same. They'd filmed that, and then you'd have a green room where you could rehearse, and you had a production assistant with you, and you went through your pitch with them, which was quite good actually. But they were quite cunning. They made that table really big, and there were no lights and no heat. I'm sure they put extra heat into those lights. So when you walked up the stairs, the few little stairs at the end, you had to scoosh you down a bit and then walk up. And then you found a table was half the size. So as you're putting your display up, you're thinking, oh my, like things are falling off, and it's already anything to put you on the back foot to make a bit more drama, I imagine. And then you've got too many spotlights that aren't necessary, so many cameras. It's a proper big set. And then the pitch is 100% genuine. And in fact, as I was setting up, I drove my van into the car park, and Theo came the other way, and the production assistant grabbed him and said, come this way, you have to get out of their way. If you say even hello beforehand, then you probably wouldn't be allowed on the show. You can't have ever met any of the dragons, because they might have an unfair advantage over the other dragons. So that was all really quite real. And like I said, I thought I might get a bit of advertising from it. I got absolutely ruined very early on by Peter Jones, who didn't understand the fact I was encouraging reuse of plastic bags. He criticised me for encouraging people to buy new carrier bags. And the idea was it's a plastic bin that we all at university, certainly me and all my mates, we used to hang carrier bags on doorknobs, and that was our bin. So it was just a fancy one of them basically to hold a carrier bag. And this was 12 years ago. So Peter was very quickly out. Duncan didn't like me, and James Kahn was out, but he liked my tie. And it was just left to Deborah and Theo. So I think at that point, my back was against the ropes a little bit. So I came out fighting, and Theo said, that's going to break as soon as I use it. And he threw his money in, his 50 grand, which wasn't real because I would have done a runner. And also the stairs weren't real, so I didn't know where to run to. And he threw it in, and I remember thinking, finally something's gone my way, because they all gang up a little bit, because ultimately, if one of them's going to invest, if they've all ganged up, you're going to accept a much worse offer. So it's always in their interest to make you feel terrible. And so as soon as he suggested the bag was going to break, and I came out of the line something along the lines of, well, you recycle cardboard boxes and empty cartons and egg boxes, not breeze blocks and heavy stuff. And I thought, even watching it back now, I think, oh my goodness, like Theo's this retail magnate that's hugely successful. Who am I to sort of put him in his place? But as I said, when your back's against the ropes and you do know your product and you've worked really hard for this moment, then I think you're entitled to be a little bit cheeky. And that's what they did say afterwards, is that they took to me. It wasn't necessarily just a product, it was me as a person. And actually, it was interesting because you go through due diligence afterwards. We all shook hands when you used to be allowed to shake hands, and accepted the deal on the den. But then all of their lawyers turn up, and I had a yellow Robin Reliant van, which I'd done with my business name on the side. They turned up in a Maybach and a Porsche with all their suits, all came in, and I was in a workshop that my dad's mate had lent me. I was in a toilet block. So there were like blokes walking in high-vis vests going for a wee in the corner of the room, and there's Deborah, all the solicitors lined up, Theo, and they must have thought, who is this guy? Like, he's such a chancer. But everything, I had my accounts were a Sainsbury's carrier bag was that year's receipts, and a Tesco's was the year before, and that was it. I divided them up into 2 bags because I didn't have an accountant or anything. Again, wasn't that interested in money. It was just creating cool stuff that was provocative. But yeah, it did really, really help. And Deborah was more interested in the bins, and we had them in Tesco's and Ryman's and those places. And even for me to go out to Far East and watch them separating all the waste because it's made out of recycled plastic. And I turned up at a factory with my name in lights and people holding umbrellas above my head. It was just a whirlwind. Fantastic experience. Some of it didn't go completely to plan. Obviously, the recession hit in 2008, and I went on Dragon's Den in 2007. So that was tough. Yeah. Luxury furniture got hit quite hard. But even seeing my stuff for sale in Selfridges, and that was just, what it's all experience, isn't it? It's not I did think back in those days, I've won at life, that's it, I'm going to have £1 million now and I can retire, I've won. And then you realize as you get older, actually every day is just a little opportunity to make little wins, and ultimately you just die at the end anyway. So just enjoy those little wins as you go, and influence as many people as you can, and have as much fun as possible, I suppose.
That's it. Well said. Well said. And what about the sort of TV work after that? How soon did that arrive? And did you just get spotted somewhere, or where did the first opportunity to host or become a presenter?
So that was, I believe it was a runner from Dragon's Den. 3 or 4 years later, they started Amazing Spaces, and they were doing all the research, and they phoned up and said, hey, don't think you remember me. And apparently I made him a cup of tea. So I thought, oh, there's a good lesson. Always make someone a cup of tea, because it might come back and reward you. And they said, have you supplied your eco furniture to anybody doing a small space? There's a new show coming out called Amazing Spaces, and we want to feature an eco build. And I said, oh, well, I'll do it. Obviously, there's an opportunity here. So that's when I put the office in my back garden. And I think what excited them even more was the fact that the shipping container got delivered and dumped on the road outside my little cottage. And my plan was to have the crane it over the garage next door, a dilapidated old garage next door, into the back garden. Happy days, cut out some windows. It'd take a couple of days to fabricate. And when the guy arrived, he said, I'm really sorry, that's a listed garage. I can't lift over that. Our insurance won't cover it. So he dumped it on the road and just drove off. And the cameras kept rolling. I thought, oh, what are we going to do? And at the time I was working with my mate Gav. We went to school together, and he's just a machine. In fact, he was the hooker when I was scrum half. So it was the tap on his hand from me. So we were a good little team.
Yep.
And he's a unit, as all hookers are. So he just went, well, we're not being beaten, are we? So he got out his angle grinder and chopped the shipping container up into 25 pieces. We walked it through the front door of the cottage, through the kitchen, out into the back, and welded it all back together again. So I think from a production company point of view, it was gold, because they thought, oh, these guys are just silly. They'll do whatever it takes. And they got more sparks and more fun. And a 20-foot container becomes a 21-foot container when you cut it up and weld it back together, it turns out, because each corrugation is compressed as they assemble it. So it's a bing, the whole thing just expanded. But it was a good lesson. But at the same time, I think it was that the energy, the passion, the will to overcome obstacles and hurdles. And I enjoy talking about design. I've always said I wouldn't present anything. I'm not a generic, I don't put myself down as a TV presenter, really. I just get filmed designing and making things. And then sometimes that involves speaking. And actually, they're the bits I dislike the most. Doing things like voiceover, as you probably know, it's hard, isn't it? You almost have to become a caricature of yourself and over accentuate and have too much energy. And people watching think, what's this clown doing? So I don't enjoy I don't like pieces to camera. I don't like the real hard presenting. But I've worked with people like Gok Wan, Julia Bradbury, who are fantastic at it. So Julia, in that moment, makes you feel like the most important person in her world. And she knows the subject matter inside out, because she's just very good at that. Gok's the same. We did 20 episodes with Gok for Channel 4, Philly House of Free. And his energy, and he's, 1 minute you're laughing and joking and he's being hugely inappropriate off camera. The next minute, the contestant, or the person who's being filmed walks in, and he'll just flick a switch and he'll be charming and endearing, and his big skill is making them feel relaxed, because once they're relaxed, they give a lot more. As you know, some people, they clam up or they say too much, like I do. People never do what you want them to do when you're talking to people who aren't used to television. And Gok absolutely gets that. So those people are great presenters, I think. And I don't want to ever compare myself to that or try and do that. I just like chatting about design, showing people techniques, and that's what makes me happy, really.
And did you adjust easily to sort of being maybe recognized or being on the TV and things like that, and how your life changed?
I think so. I'm quite fortunate. I think I sit in a really lovely place where I can go to Tesco's and just do my shopping. One person might say something like hi, or to B&Q, obviously, that's a bit more obvious, Wix and B&Q. And funnily enough, it's voice. People see it. There's a lot of guys out there. There's a lot of white guys with beards these days about our age. You know, it's not an uncommon look with a checkered shirt, especially. So I probably walk past a lot of people and they maybe take a second glance, but it's when you're at the checkout typically, and they hear you speak, it almost like confirms it for them. And as well, if I'm at Grand Designs or the Ideal Home Show doing something work-based, then yes, of course, but they're expecting to see you there. They're on the lookout. But I'm really fortunate. I can still go to the rugby, have a few too many beers, make a bit of a fool of myself, and I'm not in the Daily Mail. And actually, that would that puts the fear of God into me, the thought of that. And I don't know if I'd enjoy that. I don't think that suits my life. You can sympathize. I'm not comparing myself to Ed Sheeran, by the way, but you can sympathize with him building his own pub and his own swimming pool in his back garden and having a gated community, because imagine not being able to go shopping or go to the pub and, like I say, have a few too many beers. That's a shame, isn't it? And that I rely on that. I like that environment. So I think, I don't think I'd like to go to the next stage of fame where it does affect your life. That'd be the best thing for me. Is my mum, when she walks the dog every morning, a lot of the old people that walk their dogs as well, they go, "Oh, I saw your son on the telly the other day." Or sometimes I try and get my mum in the shows as well, or Monty the dog, he's in the shows. So that's nice when you look at those nice moments. And also my goddaughter Heather, she comes to filming usually when I'm filming. And the likes of Gok, she came and he spent loads of time with her and complimented her on the dress because she bought a Gok Wan dress. And those little moments where it benefits the whole family, you think, oh, that's why I do it. That's fantastic. And also, I was able to tell my old English teacher that I was a best-selling author. I didn't specify, like, the best-selling bit is very niche. It was, for an hour, I was the best-selling author in a niche on Amazon that was decking and outdoor furniture or something, but that doesn't matter. I'll take it. But it's those weird little things. But I imagine if you were properly famous, that it would be a bit hard. And like you say, you've got to adjust because you're not born into that environment. Very few people are born that way. So you have to adjust and learn new ways of behaving and little silly things. Like I've never been a road rage person. But I'd occasionally, show somebody I was unhappy with the way they'd cut me up visually with two fingers. You can't do things like that. You've got to be a little bit careful in that respect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking of driving, do you still own the converted ambulance?
Yes, so that's in fact, I'm going to visit my friend for lunch in it tomorrow because he's not seen it yet. So I love that. That kept me sane during lockdown. I do like vehicles. My first proper job was a car designer. And that sounds amazing. It was awful. There's 4,000 people bickering over nuts and bolts. It's not a nice environment. But so at the moment, I've got a double-decker bus that's a workshop, which we use. We travel around the country teaching people how to make things. I love that. And there's a weird loophole in the law. I hope I'm not telling people this loophole. Don't do this at home, kids, obviously. But if you remove all of the seats from a double-decker bus, and in fact, Ryan Wilson is doing this as we speak. And I've been given the blame on a number of occasions. If you remove all the seats from a double-decker bus, apart from 8, you can recategorize it as a car, which is utter nonsense. So I drive around in my double-decker bus because you can pick up double-decker buses for next to no money. So that's great. I've got a smart car and I've got a couple of Sinclair C5s. You old enough to remember Sinclair C5s?
No.
Little white electric cars, the first electric vehicle. So I've got a couple of those. They're fantastic.
Hold on, back to the bus. When you say, so you don't need a bus driver's license?
No, it's ridiculous. So you insure it for everybody in the world to drive because usually a bus isn't a private ownership thing, is it? So it's like $1,000 a year for everyone to drive. And then because it's been recategorized as you have to have a sticker up saying not for hire or reward, which nobody knows what that means anyway, but that's the legality of it. And then you can drive it on a normal car license. It has a normal car MOT as well. So my mate looks after the double decker. You're going to go and buy a double decker now, aren't you? Speak to Ryan about it. I think he might have a spare one as well.
Ryan's bought a double decker bus?
He might have bought a single decker in the end. Yeah, we'll have to find out, but he's doing something silly with his. Because he's more daft than I am.
I mean, just getting used to driving that and the size of it and turning is a skill in itself.
Do you know what? It's easier to drive than a smart car because the wheels that steer are behind you. So as you turn left, you just shift left. You don't go forwards and left. It's an immediate response. So 3-point turns, parallel parking, it's a doddle.
Oh, well.
I say that, you watch
you'd see that
tomorrow.
So you've got that bus and you go around the country and do workshops.
Teach people how to make things. Yes, we've done a tour of the UK with Gumtree. We just last year, actually during lockdown, we did a show called Tool Club, which unofficially might be definitely coming back next year on Channel 4. So that's exciting. That's a nice thing to end the year with, the knowledge that I've got a job next year. And that's really rewarding. Again, people come on board and I'll be honest, some of the things they make are a bit shonky. You wouldn't be able to sell them in a shop, but they all leave positive. They all feel good about themselves. And most of them come on board and say, why don't I do this anymore? I loved DT at school, but when you become an adult and you leave school, you're taught that you've got to go and buy a suit, buy a 3 Series BMW, go and get a sensible job and behave yourself. Yeah. And that playing around with wood was just what kids did. And then these people come on the bus and they go, oh, I love this. I'm going to get myself a drill. I'm going to get myself a sander. I'm going to do these things at home again. Creating the projects is half the battle, because typically you have a 45-minute session with these people. And in reality, if you're mentoring 10 of them at once, you've got to make sure that you can run around and do it for them in 3 minutes. But they will leave with this wonky bird box or something with the wrong sized hole. But the smile on their face is that they've accomplished something, and they can't wait to get home to their partners and say, hey, look what I made. They're actually quite pleased with themselves. So I love driving around in that. Yeah, not as much as the ambulance, though. The ambulance was just utterly ridiculous, and the timing was perfect. It's basically my brother's mate had one. He was selling it for 1,500 quid at the start of the second lockdown. I said, right, I need something to do. I mean, I'll have it.
And you've got the videos are all on YouTube, aren't they? You can watch all.
Yes,
I watched clips.
Yeah, I did it with Silverline Tools, so they sponsored me to do the videos, and it was fantastic. It was really nice. I got to document it properly, because with all the will in the world, you always forget to do a few selfie videos, don't you? And then you've lost it forever. And it's actually, for a lot of people, and myself included, it's not about the finished article. It's about the process and allowing other people to see the pitfalls and the jeopardy. And also what I loved about it, and I think this is the joy of YouTube, is that the way they edited it, they left in the funny moments, the calamities where I made mistakes. And I was really pleased with that, because I don't like suggesting to young people that we all get it right all the time and that they're stupid for making mistakes. It's so important to make mistakes in design. So the YouTube generation, I think the videos are a lot more real and raw, whereas TV still focuses on glossy, getting it all right. And I don't like that as much. So that the more we show people that it's okay to make mistakes, like you said earlier, I think that's a really important thing to do. So yeah, it's all on there, and I was really keen to make something a little bit different, a little bit quirky, not go down the standard route. So I've put acoustic paneling on the walls. It's all LED lighting. It's all voice activated with Alexa. So yeah, a few mod cons.
You've pimped it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's just a very comfortable space as well, because I like the great outdoors. I love swimming in the sea if it's 4 degrees, as long as I can have a nice hot shower afterwards.
Well, that's what I noticed. I mean, that shower looks like it's hotel standard. And that shower is epic in the corner as you walk in.
It's actually better than the shower in the houseboat. That was the only problem with doing that camper van, was it ended up being nicer than my home. So I've now had to put a few of those technologies back into my houseboat as well. But yeah, it's a really good time to build camper vans, apart from the price of vans has gone through the roof. But technology has changed. You look at lithium-ion batteries and solar panels, the low energy lighting and heating and all of those things. It's now really affordable. Whereas 10 years ago, you were stuck with a big gas tank and some rather dubious diesel heaters, and it was all very beige. And that was the other thing that fascinates me about that sector, is that it's full of like-minded go-getting people who love good clothing and footwear, and they like the great outdoors, and they're all driving around in these white plastic things with beige flowery fabric interior, and they're all made out of chipboard and fall apart in 5 minutes, and there's no thought for storage. There's a lot of design mistakes in them. So the grill rattles around as you're driving, and the cutlery slides from left to right, and the shiny crockery goes in a metal storage rack that then slides around in a shiny cabinet. You think it's just not well thought through. I want storage for a paddleboard, somewhere to wash the dogs, nice. If you buy a brand new camper van for £80,000, they'll say, this is the top of the market one, sir. It comes with a flat screen telly on a hinge that comes out from the wall with a DVD player in the side. You think, I just want Wi-Fi, mate. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I want to watch Netflix. So it's a very staid sector. It's like a lot of the manufacturers are actually from the 80s caravan market, and they've just put the same kind of components in the back of vans. I don't mind upsetting them, actually, if they do listen to this, because I asked if I could go to the NEC Motorhome show as like a very small startup company, hopefully to inspire a few self-builders, and they said no, sorry, because you might upset the people who kind of fund the show, the big players in the market. I went, oh right, so that's why you're so backwards in your design, because you won't allow new thoughts and new techniques. So I'm probably going to pitch up outside instead and show people what they could be doing for a fraction of the cost.
Well, I think I'm going to that. I think hold on, I'm opening my phone up here, because I'm an ambassador for, Van Gogh, who do all the awnings, and I work with them, and they've asked me to go down and host their event. It's not here.
It's brilliant. Thousands and thousands of motorhomes. Van Gogh, I've just bought one of their induction hobs, actually, a 2-burner induction hob, because again, that was something I was really keen to look at. Do you need gas? Do you need diesel on board these vans anymore? So we're going to have electric vans in the next couple of years, aren't we? So absolutely, why would you have an electric powered van and then a gas canister or a diesel heater in the back? So the new Van Gogh induction hob's fantastic. It's 800 watts or something. It's a real good bit of kit.
Yeah, the Caravan Camping Motorhome Show at the NEC in Birmingham.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be
There you
hosting.
go. You can.
I'll get
All
you.
right, I
I'll
might
sneak in. I'll sneak in. Let's do it.
And then
Let's
we
do
could
it.
disrupt the whole event.
And then the National Outdoor Expo at the NEC in Birmingham. So I've got them all here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be there with Vango doing their bits and
Oh,
pieces.
great.
That I use
Well,
their
I'll see you there.
the hot plate. They've got the hot plate that I use. It's just brilliant. Some of the kit is good stuff. And whether you take it on adventures or put it on in the garden and just
Yeah.
a bit of ease. I love cooking outdoors. I love having the kids, the family, everyone around and just doing stuff outdoors constantly.
Yeah, and the weather is fine for that, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
we did that for Christmas. We did pizzas on Christmas Day, so I did Christmas pizzas, Brussels
Awesome.
sprouts and chicken
Yep.
instead of turkey, pigs in blankets, and then the day after we did a teppanyaki grill. So again, just a big hot plate. You all just chuck on your veggies and your meats and stuff, and you just all stand around. I've got one of the Traeger ovens as well for smoking meat. In fact, that was the big discovery this year when we went to the rugby. Was in the morning before you go off to the game, put a load of meat on low and slow. Go off to the game because it's got a little app on your phone so you can control it. And then you go off to the game, have a few beers. You get home, think, oh, I'm hungry and I forgot to stop off for some food. Then you open the Traeger and you just smoked meat falling all over the place. That was great.
There it is. No, awesome. And rugby is a nice way to end this because obviously, unfortunately, Glasgow v Edinburgh has just been postponed, because of COVID. But here's hoping we get some Six Nations games in and fans are allowed. Let's hope we get through this sort of next stage of COVID, whether we go into lockdown or not, or whatever is around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like I said earlier, I do rely on it, and I didn't realise I don't particularly love the winter, and that's one of the things that keeps me going. You think, oh, February's coming, the rugby's back on, and that's weird, isn't it? I never really realised until I lost it that I rely on it. But I've also got tickets for Wales versus Scotland. I'm quite hopeful this year. I don't know about you, but quite a few Lions in the squad and some real talent coming through.
We've got a team, we've got strength and depth. We've got a coach that's got his team playing for him. He seems to have the changing room. Hoggy sort of leading the charge, still putting in a performance every game. Hamish Watson, you've got players in pivotal positions that can turn over big teams. We saw that in the autumn, putting a big performance in against South Africa, not getting the win, but we've got a team, and we should be walking shoulders back in every stadium this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, last year we were our own worst enemies, weren't we? To win at England and France, that was, and then lose the two home games by a couple of points was, excruciating, really, wasn't it?
But you mentioned the Welsh game there. That's the end of Doddie Aid. That's the end.
Oh, is it?
The 12th of February.
Glad you mentioned it.
Oh,
the good is ready.
I've got mine hanging in the back there, and I've got my foot in two camps this year. I'm in Team Edinburgh, but I host also the Barbarians podcast. So we've got lots going on, and I met up recently with the Team Edinburgh. We did a dunk down at Wardie Bay. Jamie Ritchie was there, the back rower for Scotland, and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So the community around Doddie Aid, it's just epic. The way it grows, the people that get involved, and I see that you're going to be out in your paddleboard putting the miles in.
That's right. Yeah, I love it. I can't wait to get out there. Actually, I've been cleaning it only the other day because it's been lived on by some ducks and geese over the last couple of weeks. But I'll be going up and down the river putting the miles in for Doddie Aid.
Good on you. Well, Max, this has been awesome. It's been great to connect. And I mean it, get in touch next time you're in town, and I'll be thinking when Scotland are next playing, is he coming up? What's happening? Because we'll get a catch up, fire pit, beer, get a cold dunk in the sea.
Definitely. Sounds good to me.
That'd be awesome.
I'll bring the ambulance.
Yeah, do that. That would be class. And my kids would love to see that because I can show them all your YouTube videos of you building it, and then there it is. That would be brilliant.
Excellent. You got a deal.
Max, awesome. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Nice one. Cheers.